not just the water people that are out there with your group. It's not just us, it's everybody. And we have to work together on this thing if we're going to correct it. It's been years and years and years. And that's what I think half the problem is nobody wants to work together. Okay? It does none of us any good. When we start, the meeting is started, I'm going to say just one thing. I'm not going to tolerate any outbursts. If you do, you're going to be given a warning, and the second time I will have someone ask you to leave. Okay? There's no need for it. We've got a very important agenda tonight that we have to look at, and I would like you to sit there, listen to what we have to listen to also with Doug Miller's presentation. Doug, thank you. Doug's here? Yeah. Where's he going? Talking about. You all set, Doug? Yeah. Please.
Good evening. I think we were going to start off, give a little update on sewer activities, right? So, probably about a month ago or so, we had a meeting with DEC on the sewer work in the village, and the DEC was looking for a work plan and a hydraulic analysis of the existing sewer system. So when we met with them, we came up with a plan to develop an analysis of the sewer system within the village. Some of the work may exist, we understand, but in order to get a fair assessment to, based on what we've done to date, looks like $6 million for the system. But the discussions we had with DEC were if we could better define some of the issues within the system, then there may be opportunities to reduce capital costs short-term and maybe develop a long-term capital improvement program for the village. So that's what we had in front of you. This information was sent to DEC Jennifer Powell October 15th, as she requested, and I touched base with her yesterday. I don't have any comments back from her as yet, but I'm sure there will be a couple comments. The schedule indicates that we would like to get moving on the project sometime in November with the flow monitoring.
Just to put everything in perspective, this has been outstanding for a while, and what Doug alluded to is that some of this work we already exist. The village was invoiced for some of this flow metering that was supposed to take place over a 1 year span, and the invoices were paid. We do not have the actual numbers that came from that. So, it could be that that they don't. We got to get to the bottom of whether or not this was, what was done and where the actual documentation is. That's an issue with our former engineer. The reason that the board is looking at this is that this has been outstanding for a while. This goes all the way back to discussions after the original consent order. So this is a hot item, and that October 15th date was a hard date. It's been extended because the board didn't have a meeting, but we've got to get this out of the way, and it really doesn't have anything. Whether or not we have funding to cover the costs, what Doug was alluding to there was we have always been estimating our wastewater treatment plant sewer system project at being in that $3.5 million range. And if you recall, the board was asked for funding purposes to adopt a bond resolution. We didn't advance any monies under. But the board made it real clear at that time that this project is looking at, if we're looking at $6 million, there's gonna be a real problem here because we'd already, we're just not gonna do it. And that's sort of the news we got from the DEC, is that a lot of this work, you're under the impression, had to be done as part of the original project. The project's going to be done all at once. Probably can be protracted as part of our annual capital plan. So hopefully we'll be back to $3 to $3.5 million range. Doug doesn't know all the background, but hopefully that makes a little bit more sense to you now. But this is a pretty routine plan. I'd like the board to approve it so we can get moving on it. If this other documentation turns up, then there'll be we'll work a credit on, this is just a work plan, telling you what we're going to do. The actual flow metering is something that will be done on the work plan. So, he's got to put that together. That's something that's going to be over a year's time. But we've got to get moving on this because it has been outstanding for quite a while. Do you need a motion on that?
I'll make the motion, we go ahead with the plan.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Okay. The next item that I wanted to review was the status of the drinking water project. So, I guess back in June, Miller Engineers was brought on board to work with the village, and at that time, we attended a meeting at Oswego County DOH with the DOH, Oswego County DOH and New York State DOH, and we discussed groundwater under the influence at the well field in the village of Phoenix. We reviewed some of the test data that had recently been developed through testing through the DOH. We discussed the status of the project, and DOH and ourselves agreed that we would review the existing engineering data in place that the village had, and we would go back to the wells and we would take a very sophisticated and hard look to see what was going on with the wells at this time. At the same time, we would take a look at all the engineering data. We hit the ground running, and we took all the reports and continued moving forward with the review of the determination that Oswego County and DOH had made with groundwater under the influence. So we took a look at things in the village. There are approximately 2,400 users in the village. The water is supplied from Foster Wells 1 and 3. In 2011, the DOH determined that there was groundwater under the influence. We took a look at the data to date. There was a draft engineer's report from Dunn and Scromo dated 2012. We used that as basis of review for much of our work. The work tasks that we undertook gave a final evaluation of some of the alternatives, and we incorporated that into compliance with the surface water treatment rules. So during the review, what we saw was that there was indication of microscopic particulate analysis, MPAs, in the well. That's basically what the DOH had indicated the groundwater under the influence consisted of. So we took our hydrogeologist out to the site and we investigated the wells, trying to look and see if there was any type of damage to the existing wells, that we could salvage the wells and potentially save the village cost in implementing any remedial actions thereof. What we found was the wells looked to be intact. The casings were intact, the temperatures in the wells were fine. Foster well number 1 had some presence of iron and some bacteria. Foster well 1 was being pumped at a higher rate than you'd like to, but it was within reason. Laboratory results for the MPAs that I mentioned before were a little bit heavy, but that was based on iron that you're pumping from the groundwater out there. We reviewed some of the raw water lab reports from DOH and previous testing, and it appears that naturally occurring iron and manganese are the main contaminants in the well. Once again, the well, as we talked before, the drinking water meets all the requirements of New York State drinking water. So we're just reviewing for drinking water, or water under the influence. So to summarize our test results out of the well, we could not identify any significant damage or defects in the existing well construction that would lead us to believe that constructing new wells in the same aquifer would produce a water supply that would not be subject to groundwater under the influence. So as such, we concluded that the option of putting in new wells in that aquifer, in that close proximity, was not a viable option. Therefore, we didn't carry that option any further. So what we looked at next, we had 2 options that were viable to the DOH. One was to, and those are requirements to meet the Safe Drinking Water Act laws. One was to develop a new drinking water plant, and the other was to connect to another approved source. I feel like Jim Beheim is scratching my head. The alternative treatment plant, the new facilities would include treatment technology primarily to remove the iron and manganese that is in that drinking water. Cost estimates were prepared using chemical precipitation, flocculation, and settling, followed by multimedia treatment plant filtration. Units would be pre-packaged. Technology that we looked at was a well-established technology. We looked at different options potentially to reduce costs. However, for the budgeting purposes, we just went around with one proven technology. We then we met with vendors. On that information, we received cost package proposals from the 2 vendors, and we included that information in your packets. The other thing we looked at was connection to another approved source. Primarily, we met with the Metropolitan Water Board. They indicated that their transmission line crosses the village transmission line at the intersection of 481 and County Route 12. They gave us options on costs. They indicated that if the village were to connect to the Metropolitan Water Board line, you would be a wholesale consumer. As such, you could sell to other communities through this connection. There was some interest through a couple other communities that would be interested in combining with the village on this option. And there's details of that information that we received from the Metropolitan Water Board. Henceforth, we took the draft report, we met with the Oswego County Health Department. We told them what our findings were. They looked favorably on what we had proposed here. They had no significant comments at this time. We didn't give them the draft report, but they had no significant comments on the 2 options we looked. They thought they were both viable. So I think the next thing that we had in here is we did some preliminary cost estimates. And we factored in operation and maintenance, we factored in engineering and project management. What we came up with our preliminary costs was, make sure I'm on the right page. For the, probably just go to the present work table. There's a present work table, so for the new treatment plant, we had a capital cost in 2014 of $3,580,000, an annual operating cost of $252,000. For the tie-in to the Metropolitan Water Board line, we had $516,000 as a capital cost and an annual operating cost of $185,000. When we went through this, we also, there's some items in here where there is an amount of unaccounted for water. So based on our discussions that we had with the Oswego County Health Department, and Mr. Lynch was there, we also discussed that, and the Oswego County Health Department provided contact to Rural Water, who has a circuit rider who I believe is somewhere in the near future will visit the village and will provide some services. I believe there was no cost associated with that, right? So that would be another portion of what we're looking at here. Now keep in mind from the meetings that I've attended, what we're addressing here is the issue of surface water or groundwater under the influence of surface water. So that's what we're addressing here. Short term, that should address some of the issues that you're having with your drinking water, but this will be part of a long-term program in conjunction with people like the circuit riders and whatnot to keep moving forward proactively. And that I wanted to also say that based on the meeting that we had in Oswego County with both the state and the county, they wanted to commend the village and the village board for what they've been doing for the last few years.
Doug, did you get the numbers on the Metro connection up? Did I miss that?
Yeah, the Metro connection was 516.
Now, would it be viable to go to versus the Metropolitan to go 4 miles of pipeline from the north end of the village out to Great Bear and tie into with Fulton if Fulton would work with us, which years ago when I met with them they were willing to.
We could certainly look at that. I think it would probably, it may be a comparable cost. You'd have the addition of, the 4 miles of transmission main. But if you wanted to, maybe we could take a look at that too. It's not out of the realm of reality.
Doug, if the water cost is comparable, 4 miles of transmission line, County Route 12 is a relatively new line, and we're near the connection point right now with that. So you can't really compare those two, can you? Probably looking at what's it cost to transmission line? 70 bucks a foot?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
70 to 100 bucks a foot.
Well, we can look into the actual cost per gallon. That if that rate is significantly lower, then we could look at that option. But if not, then but yeah. So that would be something part of the engineering report after you approve which decision.
Yeah, we could do that.
Well, I just think, I'm looking at that because that has been.
No, right here.
I'm not going to throw nothing. No, I was wondering because of the fact that, it is a real good source that has been there, 4 years, and they used to ship it out of there to New York City with rail cars. So, and they've got plenty of water, and they would be willing, I think, to sell because they were willing years ago when we talked to them. And if that were to come about, I mean, because of the fact, I'm only mentioning it because I've had people ask me, you're not going to tie on to that Lake Ontario water that comes from Lake Erie, right? And I mean, because what happened out in Ohio really made a lot of people set up and take notice when they saw the tanker trailers from the military giving these people water, from the algae and stuff, the blue algae. And I mean, is it there? I don't know, but there's people on both sides that are concerned. There's people that are concerned if we go, stay in our own well and try to filter it, or if we go to Metropolitan and pull it. I mean, so far I haven't seen anything that would deter us from going to Metropolitan, but I'd like to look at that also.
Okay. I mean, it's quick enough to do.
If the cost of the water is comparable, then this additional project cost to run the line 4 miles is significant. That was the only point I was making.
That 4 miles, that will still go to the tower and then back?
It would come in.
Right on.
It would come in and tie right in, and just the same as it's coming in from the east, it would be coming in from the west.
It would be treated
That
between
would have to be, we'd have to, look at that too. Would we have to treat that, or would it be treated when they send it? I doubt that, probably, they would probably send us the raw.
But, whatever option we come up with, we would make the modification so we could use the existing system as best as possible.
I mean, I would back either one of those, but I mean, I would like, if we look at that with Fulton. But if not, and if it's not like the attorney said, if it's not going to be viable because of the cost, then, which it will be higher, I'm sure of that. But then we go with Metropolitan, my feeling, but. Anybody else got any thoughts on it?
Well, are we making a decision tonight what option we're gonna go with from here? What would be the point of looking at going to Great Bear? If we're going to make a decision tonight on which one of these options, is it gonna push a decision off even further?
I think there's 2 separate issues. You've got to make the decision tonight. I think it's pretty clear. It's time to make the Metro decision. What doesn't have the benefit of, but just sort of, this happened originally, was in April of 2011. We had a date given to us by the Department of Health to give them our options for, I want to say November of 2011 or December. And the board immediately commissioned the engineer, but the report wasn't delivered to the DOH until, I want to say September of 2012. And the board has been looking at trying to save our wells, okay? And we, one of those options we elected, everybody knew we would probably be, a very small percentage chance of success. But given the comparable cost, it made sense to try it. It didn't work, okay? But at least we know the test results to prove it. So we got to proceed now, and I think if we give the Department of Health a decision, but then meanwhile also look at the Fulton option, there's not going to be an issue with them switching public water sources. They just want to see us resolve the issue. And the treatment plant, new wells. Doug said to me last night on the phone, you can't drill a well in a swamp. And I said, the board would have been looking at trying to save the wells if they had been made crystal clear to us. And it wasn't, because the wells have existed there for years. The village got a water quality award, 1998, something like that. Best in Oswego County, State of New York. So, something changed over time. EFC financed the project in the early 2000s to the tune of a few $1 million. So, water quality was looked at there. So something changed over time, but it's sort of clear now that we can't save the wells. And my suggestion is make the decision to go with Metro. We can immediately look at Fulton. If it turns out that that's better in the long run, cost-wise, we'll be able to switch. I don't think that'll be an issue for the Department of Health. What's going to be an issue is continuing this, effort to try and save the wells. And we tried.
But to Steve's point, I think we've developed a very strong relationship, through Jim and Ryan, John, with the health department.
I agree, just looking at the capital costs and the maintenance operating budget, there's only one option in my eyes. It's simply less, it's good quality water.
Doesn't make sense, or it doesn't make sense for this reason. And, again, the Department of Health, don't be so concerned about where the public water source is from. It's just that we're going to public water source, or we've, gone to filtration, treatment.
Is there a way of doing it with that if we vote on it, that we could go with Metropolitan Water if it's cheaper than, or the money figures are not that far off because it's a public source?
Just make a motion saying we're doing the public source.
Yeah, you can do the public source option, and you can condition it also on asking Miller Engineers to also look at Fulton as an option, which way it's going to go in. It was a tough decision for the board to make. Let's say Fulton Water is substantially cheaper, but you've got to sort of trade that off for the increased capital cost. That'll be something that can be presented to the board pretty quickly, right, and then to the Department of Health. So I would say adopt a resolution, approving the public source option, but also with the proviso that the Miller Engineers will take a look at Fulton before getting to the board.
Okay. Everybody understand that?
Yeah, but the other reservation I have with going with the Great Bear is I remember a few years back, somebody that owned property there wanted to own or open an alpaca farm. Yeah. And Fulton had to fight them tooth and nail because it would affect the aquifer that they get their water from. If we looked at it and it was cheaper and we wanted to go with it, what do we do 4 years down the road if their government changes, their zoning changes, and all of a sudden now you have somebody that wants to develop that property around that aquifer and it contaminates it, and then where do we go? Then we're
So that's well water too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spraying as well.
Yeah.
Because at least.
No, and also the rate changes too, so I think that's something you have to consider. You're gonna have a lot more stability with rates from Metro or Aqua because of the market
And it continues to.
yeah, and, that's a good point. I mean, that's what we went through with the town a couple of years ago. We had to basically, while we were doing this, sort of fight to save the aquifer if we could save the wells. That was that whole gravel project.
That's not
Some change.
And it's how we're stuck in the present situation.
Right.
The wells were great when they did them, but over time, look what happened. And I would hate to see even remotely going to another aquifer source like Fulton, only to find out in 5 years, zoning has changed in that area, and then we're going to be affected again.
Yeah. Or just
If you don't,
I think you could look into it, but
well, I mean, there's no sense in having him look into it if the rest of the board's not, doesn't feel that they want to go with that option. I mean,
that's just
that was my
my
opinion.
feeling on it.
And if the rest of the board feels otherwise, then I'm willing to go with what the rest of the board feels like. If you want to stick it with just if you want to stick with just the public supply through Metropolitan, then let's go for it.
Brian's outline. Go with the public supply source option, and just there's a proviso in the resolution that Doug will take a look at Fulton and just report back to the board in a couple of weeks. That's not gonna be the issue right now.
We'll look at the wellhead protection program, I mean,
Yeah.
look at the capacity of the wells.
Yeah, just report,
Transmission.
it's a viable option, you know, it's another public source, but, you know, maybe we have the same issues, because it's, you know, it's well,
Yeah.
springs, you know, so. But you can, you know, sort of put that as a tail on your resolution.
All right. Hold on. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we look at public options for our water source.
Second.
Seconded by Ryan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Carried.
Okay, to be specific though, so it's the Metro source subject to Miller Engineers looking at Fulton and coming back to the board just with information, and then the board can consider changing that. But otherwise, we're gonna go with Metro option.
Everybody understand it? Okay. Anybody got anything else for Doug? All right, Jim?
Yeah, Doug,
Yeah.
just curious, not to, no disrespect to what was said up there, but are we looking at a lot of money for you to go do that research from Fulton? Come
No.
back?
No, it should all be contained in the scope of the original work.
Okay, so no additional costs for that research?
Well, there'll be some additional costs, but it's a few phone calls and, you know,
Just putting it out there, I mean, you're spending enough as it is, I don't want it to be some exorbitant amount that hits these guys later, I just want to get an idea.
no, I mean, I'm anticipating, you know, some type of a cost estimate, a couple phone calls, you know,
Okay,
I'm up in the area anymore, we're taking a look and see what the wells look like.
all right, just as long as
They,
they're.
they may not even be interested now, I mean, you know, with doing that, so.
Right. You know, just not in the engineer's office, right? Should be all right.
Would, are you gonna have to scoot out of here, or are you gonna keep?
No, I'm all set,
So
I'll be here.
you hang around for a little bit,
Yeah.
and at some point,
I'll be
you know,
there.
like, public comments, if there's any, yeah, maybe.
If, I'm gonna deviate, I guess, from the agenda. As long as Doug is up there, okay, if we can be fair to one another, if anybody's got any questions for Doug, okay, you were first.
I was wondering prior to doing the vote, if you did the cost breakdown per gallon, if you actually did the treatment facility, because even though it's $3.5 million to build it, how much per gallon over time, because the village was interested in selling water, would it actually come down after you amortize the costs if you get grants and funding? The board just blatantly, I mean, they just voted on hooking to Metro, but what was the actual cost per gallon breakdown if you hook to Metro versus having the treatment facility, knowing that you won't pay off the $3.5 million within 20 years, but this is a village that's going to be around for a lot longer than that?
We did a present worth analysis of each alternative. The present worth alternative for the new treatment plant was $6.7 million over a 20-year period, and the connection to the Metropolitan Water Board was $2.8 million over a 20-year period. I didn't take that simple calculation of dividing out the unit cost, because the amount of water that gets used either way is exactly the same. But we use an average daily consumption of 300,000 gallons per day, with a peak daily consumption of 400,000 gallons. And that's where we came across that there is some unaccounted water in that number. So that's where we got in touch with Rural Water to come in and take a look and see if we can pinpoint that, if that's through meters or leaks or whatever it is, unaccounted water.
So you just did the 20-year plan, you didn't look forward to average it out once the system started paying.
Well, you know, a 20-year project like this, you know, 20, 25 years, then you start getting other capital costs, you get regulations that are, you know, subject to change, so the numbers start to skew. And what we did is we used the criteria for federal water projects through rural development. So the plan we put together is based on a preliminary engineering report in conjunction with our US manual. I don't have it in front of me, but in conjunction with, you know, Mike Madigan's office out of Watertown.
So did you give the village all the grants that are available due to the point system assessment?
You know, when we put these projects together like this in a preliminary engineering phase, we don't drive the grants into the cost for comparison's sake. But what we have discussed with rural development, I mean, you're right on, we have a long-standing relationship with rural development. So I sat down with Michael Madigan up in Watertown, and right now, rural development has a maximum grant for any type of project of this type of magnitude of $750,000. So that's the max grant you would get from rural development, and then they would come back with that with a low interest loan. And right now, the low interest loan is floating around 2.5%. So I mean, you can kind of do the math. If you have a $6 million project and a $2 million project, the bottom line max that a community like this, based on the average house or the median income per household, would be a $750,000 grant in today, in 2014, 2015. Could fluctuate a little bit more, and at the end of the year, sometimes they have leftover money. A community like this would probably score high, but it all depends on the year of how much more they might throw in.
So when you use the 2012 report from Dunn and Scromo, there was a price differential. It was about $400,000 to hook to Metropolitan, and it was not $6.5 million to do the water treatment facility. Why the great disparity in costs within 2 years?
I'm not sure. I didn't do the Dunn and Scromo report, but for the treatment plant, we actually requested capital costs from the vendors. And we have capital costs from 2 vendors that indicate that the equipment just for the water filtration was in the magnitude of $1 million. And then there's ancillary equipment to that. So I can't answer that for Mr. Scromo's work. I can provide you the quotes that we got from our 2 vendors.
And then when you quoted the operational cost for the water, isn't it true that in order to hook to Metropolitan, you still have to build a pump system, plus you still have to sort of chlorinate the water? Isn't that part of the process too?
Yeah, that's what's in the cost. Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
And then are you going to train the DPW guys, or do they have to do
I'm not sure. We carried a cost for water treatment. You know, we carried a labor cost on both options, and the costs are, you know, indicative of what you would have. I mean, there's different classifications of operators. So if we had a treatment plant, we didn't feel that you had to run it 24/7 based on the amount of water, the storage, and capacity you have in the system. So we based those numbers on 5 days a week, 8 hours a day operation. But you know, likewise with the development of tying into another source, whether it's Great Bear or the Metropolitan Water Board, you're probably going to be very similar in operation to what you are now, but those costs are in there.
But
Yes.
since they decided to do Metropolitan Water, what's the time frame for the actual work to commence? Sorry that I'm asking.
Yeah, and we developed a preliminary timeline. I mean, you know, right now it's preliminary, but you know, if we got approval from the board and we buttoned up a couple loose ends, this is a draft report that we did. We were anticipating an approval of the report from the Oswego County Health Department end of the year. Then we would have a submission for funding applications, you know, sometime in the spring with the completion of the engineering design in parallel with that. Hopefully we would have the funding in place mid-July. My discussions with Mike Madigan, that was a little bit fuzzy, whether we could get that in July or it would have to be further out in the fall. But once we had the funding in place, then we would have the project already designed and we could initiate construction in the spring of 2016.
So,
And that's a discussion we also had with the Oswego County Health Department and the state health department, and they were on board with that.
So what did you base your costs on versus the 2012 report and the cost to operate? I think it's $100,000 to operate the well system, and I guess you added another $100,000 for the water.
I don't follow your question.
Well, because you need operators to operate, it doesn't matter what system, but if you hook to Metropolitan,
Okay.
the cost increase. There's a difference between the cost to currently run the well versus the cost to hook to Metropolitan. So why the increased cost to operate the hookup to Metropolitan?
What we used for operating costs
Makes sense.
for the new drinking water plant, the items that we took into account, and this is a draft report, but we used additional electrical costs with 9 cents per kilowatt hour, chemical costs for polymer and alum. We used approximately 1,800 hours a year for operator labor. Sludge disposal charges, we estimated about 40 tons a year. Equipment maintenance for miscellaneous equipment, laboratory charges, and annual well field service. For the connection to the Metropolitan Water Board line, we use the water purchase of approximately 9 million gallons a month. Electrical costs, once again, at 9 cents a kilowatt hour. Approximately 260 hours of operator time a year. And then a per unit property assessment is directed by Metropolitan Water Board of 1,000 units.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Mia, you're next.
I had, first,
Can I get your name?
Alexis.
Hi, Alexis, how are you?
And I wanted to, I'm sorry, James Street.
That's okay.
My first question regarding, the concerns over using metropolitan water, which I guess, I'm assuming is coming from Lake Ontario. I think if you referred to past meeting minutes that I wasn't even here, but I read them. You stated yourself that the risk was very low of getting an algae problem there due to the lake size and temperature and things like that. I read the meeting minutes, so I didn't know if you wanted to clarify that point about the algae risk at Lake Erie versus Lake Ontario.
Sure, I can follow up on that. I think Mr. Pendergast asked that question at one of the meetings, and one of my associates was here and addressed that. And we brought that up when we met with Ms. Rosenthal at the Metropolitan Water Board. Ryan and Jim were there. And basically what you have is, you know, in environmental circles, you've got, you know, no two areas are exactly the same, right? So if you think about Lake Erie, if you're familiar with the Great Lake Basin, Lake Erie is the shallowest lake of the whole system. I'm not sure what the depths are, but you know they dredge that channel from Cleveland to Toledo nonstop. Done a lot of work out in the Midwest, and there's a huge dredging program out there. So it leads me to believe that the depth of Lake Erie, you know, in some areas is 40 feet, 20 feet. Lake Ontario is the deepest of all the lakes. They tell me when working with biologists in Sault Ste. Marie that sometimes, you know, there's some depths in the lake where it gets down to 200-300 feet deep. So the biological activity of the two lakes is in stark contrast. Now, what my understanding is what happens over in Lake Erie is you have a lot of agricultural properties on that west end of the lake where it's shallowest. So you have a lot of things that we talked about that would be the same that we're talking here of groundwater under the influence. So you have pathogens, you have nitrogen, you have phosphorus, which are normally the constituents that get in a lake. And the lake doesn't turn over, so that it sits on top of the lake. Here in Lake Ontario, specifically to the Metropolitan Water Board source, the intake goes deep out into the lake, so you're not pulling off the surface water. And then additionally, they have what I described here, you know, a full-blown treatment plant where they treat the water. So the risk of something happening here is extremely low, and you know, Ms. Rosenthal confirmed that with our discussions.
And that sort of leads to my second question, which will lead into his question about filtration. When you talk about the metropolitan treatment plant, regarding the microscopic particulate, do they do any, besides regular filtration, do they do any ultraviolet treatment that you know of to take care of any MPAs or that?
I don't believe that they have that in their treatment train right now. That's not a question we asked, but they do meet all the safe drinking water regulations.
Because that's what we've been in violation of with the surface water infiltration.
No. What's happened with the village is the health department has made a determination that you're groundwater under the influence.
Right,
So basically what that says is that you're at high risk for contamination of your water, primarily cryptosporidium and giardia, right? Just like it says in your the letters that you received. So the water meets all the requirements right now, but there's a high, there's a very high risk that something could happen. So the health department wants wants the village to address that, and that's what we're trying to do.
But the way to get rid of that is either to not have surface water infiltration or to treat it, but you can't really filter it. So my question is.
Well, no, you can filter it, and there are different mechanisms of filtration. I mean, we looked at a standard filtration process.
What you talked about in the treatment, and we already voted not to go with the well water continue, but when you talk about treating it, the treatment you had was only for the iron and stuff like that, so what I'm asking is the metropolitan water, do you know how they treat it, or do they not have a problem with getting it because they're not using groundwater?
If you treat it both ways, what I alluded to here was the primary constituents that we're looking at to focus upon were the iron and manganese. Those were higher levels than the water you had there, but we would still treat for the 7-log treatment underneath the Safe Drinking Water Act. We would meet all the requirements, the same as Metropolitan Water Board does right now.
Okay. But they're not but they already do all those things, so they're not in.
Yes. Because they're taking the surface water.
And they're not, yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
William Smanchik, Enser. I live on Volney Street in Village. Just a question. I was under the understanding that we already have a connection to Metro right now today. I mean, I'm just asking for
There's an
clarification.
emergency connection that I know of at County Road 12 and 57, or County Road 12 and 481, right near their 54-inch pipeline that comes through and crosses the road there. It was strictly an emergency connection that the village used for about 2 weeks, I believe it was. I don't think there's anybody else in here that's up in age that could tell us, but I think it was like, it was 2 to 3 weeks or something. They used it with they pumped it with a fire truck and to feed the village, and that was through there. But it had to be, they had a portable chlorination system because that's a raw water pipeline. It has to be chlorinated when it comes out of there. So this is one more reason that even if we go with them, we still have to have the chlorination system and a booster pump station and.
They chlorinate, but we would have to re-chlorinate. And what you just said, the record drawings that were provided to us by Metropolitan Water Board, there is a tap.
And that's on private property.
Yeah, the record drawings indicate that there is a tap on the 54-inch line. So what Danny said makes sense. That there was a tap there, they hooked to a fire truck, and they probably backfed it into a fire hydrant and brought it back down.
And then, it was closed off, covered back up.
Correct.
And, for somebody else that remembers that it's there for an emergency, but that's the extent of it. So we still would have to acquire property. I don't believe anybody's going to give somebody a right of way in the front yard, but I'm not speaking for them. But we would have to acquire property. We would have to put up some type of pumping station and stuff there too. So with the chlorination system to bring it up to the levels that we have to be at, so. Okay.
Now, on County Route 12, where is the first village customer coming from from the existing system now?
I think all the way out to the pump station.
Yeah, it goes both ways, so we have to accommodate the current users going out towards the well system, right? When you go down County Route 12, you can see the hydrants and everything, so we have to backfeed that way and back into the village.
Okay. Because I grew up in a small town in western New York, and they had problems with closed loops. And they were running into issues with drinking water quality, which by far is much worse than what we have here in Phoenix as far as, you know, the different examples people have shown and everything else like that. Where, you know, smell, it was like well water, even though it was a public source. But they had a problem with this closed loops, and it was because of the age of the system and everything else like that, where they built streets and they weren't reconnected, and so they had to run loops in. And the other point that I see with the Fulton thing, I understand it's just exploratory at this point, but you have the water treatment again of basically well water, which we're already dealing with. Transmission lines that you're going to have a cost involved in the actual line, but you're also going to have a cost involved in acquiring a right-of-way for that transmission line.
Right, and the only thing with that is, as I noted when I was talking to the attorney earlier, was that right now, if you were going to put it through, right now would probably be the time, because there's a lot of farmland, that it would be easier to go down through than it is for, you know, once it's all continually built up like it is the other way. But then again, you know, you would probably sell to those people that would want to hook on as it's going by the house. But how many, I don't know. But they're just thoughts, and but we need to do something, and you know, that's what we're trying to do. So. Anybody? Yes, David. One more.
To answer you're asking about the tap. We've got one right out across the bridge here.
There's another. Yeah, there is a.
There is.
But that's
for
for.
valve immediately.
But that's for that goes.
That's for OCWA.
Onondaga County Water, which is going to be cost us more.
But there is a 4-inch line
Yes.
there, if we had to.
Okay, next.
Mike Wyant, 30 State Street. I'm actually just looking for a clarification piece. When you gave the timeline, I think you only went through 1 year, but you said 2016. Did you mean 2015 or 2016 for beginning of engineering, actual construction and such? 16?
Yeah, it was 2016.
For the construction?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was March of 2016.
Okay.
And the unfortunate thing is the funding.
Yeah, I missed a couple months while we were going through the numbers.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Terry, with the Boy Scouts? Terry?
Yeah.
What, Terry? Maybe for America, is that right?
Yeah, the boys are working on their communication plan, and one of the requirements was to attend the public meeting.
Okay.
So that's why we're here.
Okay, I just didn't, if you wanted to do something or speak or something, I know they've got school,
We
so.
had no idea what was on the agenda.
Okay.
We decided to come to this meeting.
All right, I apologize, because I didn't want to hold you guys up if, I know they gotta go home when they're ready. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next? Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if this is Matt Youngblow, County Route 12, Hannibal. I live on the Sandridge Aquifer, not too far from the Foster Wells. And I was just sort of curious, do we yet understand why the groundwater is being influenced by the surface water? Have we done an engineering analysis to gain that level of understanding? What is the root cause?
I believe our old engineer did something like that, but the public health, they said that there's no option back there except filtration. So they will not consider anything else. So looking into that more with an engineer wasn't really viable for us.
So, you know, the answer to that is, you've got wells, right, that, underneath, you know, let's say August and July, right, you're pumping water, you know, this is your well, right? Right, and it sticks up above the ground out there, kind of like this, right? So, when we were out there, in August, we looked in the wells. We took some temperature readings. Temperatures would be indicative of the surface water temperature going down into the ground. So maybe you'd see a higher temperature. That would say that you had groundwater under the influence, right? Because the water's going to be colder. I mean, kind of in layman's terms, the water's going to be colder down in the ground. We didn't really see that. We did see some buildup of iron and manganese, and we also reviewed test results that showed, and I'll get it wrong, but the microscopic particulate analysis, which are basically organics that get into the system. So what has been tested over the years is there are organics. Now that could be leaves decomposing, but basically leaves are something that are on the surface. So that would intuitively tell you that if leaves or any type of organic matter are getting into that well, that somehow, some way, it's being transported from the surface into the well. Now, the other thing that you think about when you think about groundwater under the influence, once again, is that well sticking up like this. You folks live out there, I mean, that's a meandering stream. So in the spring, that river, from time to time, when you have meltdown, you know, it's high level. You know, it's a wetland area out there with a lot of organics. The trees decompose, you know, you have droppings, you know, bird droppings, different things. And the waters, when it melts, it comes up, and it may have a tendency to impact the wellhead, right? I mean, there is a well protection plan in place, and it's monitored, and it's done to perfection. But what the health department's saying is they have reason to suspect that from time to time, there are the things that I just described that get into the well. Now, inherent, like Steve said, inherent to the situation, anywhere if we go and try to move those wells, you know, a couple of miles anywhere you go out there, it's going to be the same situation, and you're going to spend a lot of money. So that's how we came to the conclusion that, you know, yeah, it looks like it's groundwater under the influence. We concur with that, and to spend any more money to try to situate wells out there, it just doesn't make technical sense. And that's the same read that we got from the health department.
Hey, Matt, just for the board's benefit, Doug, Matt was very instrumental a couple of years ago when, maybe it was 1 or 2 years ago, when we opposed the town project, and he actually provided me a lot of materials, some old materials. So a lot of the information you're telling him, believe me, he knows already. He lives out there. Aren't you an engineer also, or scientist? Yeah. Yeah. So, but the Dunn-Scromo report did outline where he thought the sources were. That was based on, there was a sub-consultant, Moody's, and he included that, and that the one option the village went with was, the intent was to address all those sources, but it didn't work. But that's in that Dunn-Scromo report from, I want to say 2012. Yeah, September 2012. So,
well,
I can give you a copy.
I don't live in the village. I don't drink the water here.
Yeah.
I do have children though. They go to school. That's why I'm here tonight. I can tell you that I do live within a quarter mile of those wells. And my water in my house is crystal clear. So it's unfortunate that the village has to deal with this problem. It is a big issue. You guys have a big decision on your table. Just one other clarification, if you don't mind, would be, you had mentioned iron and manganese as part of the water quality treatment system. Require treatment of those. Those types of contaminants, I would say, are considered nuisance contaminants. So therefore, they're not harmful, if you will. They're more like pollen in the air to somebody that has allergies. So with that being said, does that $3.5 million that you had mentioned include a filtration system associated with these nuisance minerals versus the actual problem which is associated with these surface influence, surface water influence.
Yeah, it includes both, but when you design a treatment plant like that and you know you have high levels of iron and manganese, then the process train that we design around, we want to get the iron and manganese out before it starts clogging up the rest of the system. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, those are more, and if you look at the drinking water quality in the village, from time to time we see high iron and manganese, but it's more of a nuisance, just like you said, like a pollen or something. It still meets the same drinking water requirements.
That was noted way back also. I mean, in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, the health department, when the first well, when the first drilled one went in there, they were told, the village was told, you're going to have when the water levels come up, because of the close proximity, you're going to end up with high manganese and high iron content. And they said, there's nothing, that you're going to do about it, except, but it's going to happen, and because of the infiltration of the proximity of the swamp, that water's going to come up when the river level comes up. Just as he said with that, where everything swims. Okay, who's next? Mike?
Yeah, Mike Lattimore. I live on 23 Rock Street. One of the things that has been a big concern in this community is about every 4 months, we go around and flush the lines. And in the process of flushing the lines, we have all kinds of people saying everything is bad, the water's terrible, this is bad, that's bad. My question is, with everything that we're doing to correct the water in the well, or where we get our water from, are we going to be able to eliminate the flushing of the lines and the dirtiness that comes out of those lines every 4 months? Danny?
The first step is to address the groundwater under the influence. Now, when we do that, the water quality, the village will be receiving a filtered water. So, what's been described to me is, some of those particulates that aren't being filtered out, whether it's iron, manganese, the MAPs, those are going to be significantly reduced. So when the flushing occurs, the water that comes back in after the flushing process should be a cleaner water. So inherently, hopefully, the color of the water should improve. But we're also going to have to take a systematic look moving forward at the whole system and how it operates from neighborhood to neighborhood to see, somebody said closed loop systems, what's looped, what isn't looped, are there some areas that are worse than others that might have to be addressed independent of the groundwater under the influence.
Okay, anybody else? You got,
if I may.
hang on, you still going, Mike? Go ahead.
And I appreciate what you just said there, but this has been going on for 38 years that I know of, that the water has been a major problem every 4 months. And every time that there's be a ruckus in this community over water, it's every 4 months after they flush the line. The problem of the particulates that are in there could be getting there in any way, shape, form, or manner, but it doesn't make the water turn black. And I'm just asking the question, before we start spending a lot of money doing whatever we're doing, we better make sure that the water in the pipes have got a solution to it. And I think somebody had said that you guys are going to go around and find out where the leaks are. Are we able to also go around and find out where the fullness of the pipes are? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's part of a long-term plan.
The long term is, it should be a short term, that's the main problem. Anybody else?
My name is Nana Cooper. I live at 21 James Street. I'm not sure this is a pertinent question, but it does relate to water. On our water, refuge, and sewage bill, there's a $19 and some charge per quarter for a capital expenditure. Could someone please tell me what that is for at this time?
I think that was the EFC financing from 2002, I want to say. But I thought that was merged into the bill though. Did you still show it as a separate charge?
For village residents, it's shown as a separate charge, but it's actually covering quite a bit of our operation. It's supposed to go directly to capital for improvement, but our operating budget is so low that we have to look at the rates, and it's going to be combined into one rate.
Why I question that was a capital expenditure at the time when we were purchasing the new meters. It was a 5-year expenditure which was to have gone away after 5 years. My feeling is that you can call it whatever you want to now, but it is not the same thing that it was initiated for, and gives the impression that that was never completed. So I've always been rather annoyed that it was never taken away or re-identified for future use for something else. That was not the original intent. Thank you.
Okay, take a couple more. Yes, sir.
Rick Foley, 21 State Street. Just to notice, do you have cost analysis or plan for the water supply lines to all the houses that are going to be supplied by this hookup to the municipal system? And if so, you have a diagram and anything for us to go by at this time? I mean, if we're going to start from the new hookup municipal system, do we know what sections are going to be a priority to be replaced? Do we know where there's bad ends, where there's no loops in the system?
What our report addresses right now is groundwater under the influence. So what we've been negotiating with the Oswego County Health Department is looking at the 3 alternatives for the water source. So we haven't moved forward into the distribution system. I don't quite understand your question.
That's going to be a long-term project that we have to look into. We definitely need to look into it to figure out, but once we have that source, we know we have a clean source coming through the pipes. Now we can say, okay, there is a problem here because it's a dead-end loop, or the piping is old, so we need to fix this part. But we need to make sure that source water is clean and clear before we can pursue anything else.
I understand. You didn't answer my question, Mr. Miller. With all due respect, I asked you if you have a plan in place, or any cost analysis that you've done and provided to the board for completely replacement or partial replacement or by-foot replacement of any water lines in the village. Do you know where there's dead ends? You as the engineering, do you know where there's dead ends?
Sir, that's not part of our scope at this time. What we're looking at is the groundwater under the influence.
So the answer is no.
Well, we can certainly look at that, like Mr. Wood said.
Flushing items, sir, and that's part of the problem because it's a full system.
I guess the real issue is we're looking at the groundwater under the influence and water quality.
No, so you don't know.
You know what? Stop cross-examining. Do you have a question? No.
Excuse me. I'm trying to answer your question, okay?
All right, no right to speak, Mr. Primo. You're not even a board member.
I most certainly do.
Listen up. Remember what I said, okay?
Come on, we're trying to help everybody
You're
here.
addressing everybody, sir.
I am.
I'm being respectful. I'm asking you a question. You didn't answer
I
my
realize
question.
that.
I addressed it.
And I would say no myself.
Sir, please be respectful, okay? I'm here out of the goodness of my heart as a civil engineer, and I'm telling you what we've looked at here. You're more than welcome to come up and take a look.
Thank you for not answering my question. You don't have to.
I'm sorry you're so angry. It's a shame.
That's enough,
It's a shame.
okay?
Excuse me.
That's your warning, okay? Remember what I asked you, please? Okay.
We're here to help.
I am too. Excuse me.
Is there any? Don't push me, I'm telling you. Go ahead, who's next? Is there anybody else that would like to address Mr. Miller? If not, I'm going to go on with the rest of the agenda. apologize to everybody else.
Excuse me, sorry for the disruption. This is your fault.
Okay. If there's no further questions for Doug, I'm gonna let Doug go. We're gonna go with, yes, one more, okay?
He's explaining how to flush the hydrants, as my lab was asking. I know his son's girlfriend had an issue with the water. She took a picture of it, and it had like this really into the water when she let the water settle. So if there's closed loops and you're flushing the hydrants all the time, is there any way to explain why so often, like he's asking? You know that answer? Maybe not.
It basically comes down to the piping. We have several different types of piping, plus the barrels of the hydrants when they flush them. It depends on the distance from the hydrant out to the main, maybe in the middle of the street, maybe on the other side of the street, and that builds up. And when you turn those hydrants on to test, that's what you get, and you're blowing that stuff right out. And if you don't do that, then it works its way back in, and then if there's a draw from a fire or something like that, and it starts reversing the flow, it pulls that stuff right down into all of our faucets.
But can the village send out or put a big sign on 57 that you're flushing certain hydrants so we know in advance? Because a lot of times you don't know when you're flushing.
John can answer.
I can actually talk to you about that. I've been talking to Jim Lynch over the past week and a half.
I've been talking to Jim Lynch over the past week and a half, and he's looking into a system similar to what the school district has, where residents would contact the village office. We could set a database up, and what it would do, it would send out either a text or a phone message to all residents in the event of there's an emergency flushing, or it could send out a general message to let everybody know when flushing is going to take place in the water. And it's really a useful system to keep everybody up to date in the event that they do have something that happens in an emergency. So we are, actually that's a good idea, we are going to look into that, and Jim is looking into that for us.
They also notified the school district. They try to work with the school district when it's down for a holiday and then do it so they don't get, the stuff into the school. We let them know through the newspapers and through on the water billing. And the only problem we do find a lot of times with the water billing is the people that are tenants don't get to see it because it goes to the landlord and the tenants may not see it. And then the tenant does the laundry and it's dirty. So, and I think
We've changed it. It goes
Okay.
to current resident.
it's going to current resident, and then we talked about something else. I'll let Jim discuss that with you. But okay, if nobody, yes, sir.
I actually have a question for the board. Several years ago.
Doug, you can leave if you want, please. Okay.
A lot of the village representatives worked very hard to get the wellhead protection in place. My only question would be is, does the village see any future use for those wells, even if it wasn't for drinking water, that would at least maintain the wellhead protection that's afforded to the Sandridge aquifer?
Is that legal? If we're not using the walls, we have to keep the protection?
Well, that's a district in the town. The village stepped in because we had issues, we'd just been notified of the issues with the thing we're dealing with tonight. And then we were notified of this project. So we stepped in, to sort of defend the overlay until we figured out what was going on. I think Matt's question is there an alternative source for the water that makes sense to keep the system in place, in which case the wellhead protection plan is still, it argues, should be valid still, to keep it in place. I don't,
You want to make sure
That was
that,
a reserve supply or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say it'd be considered a reserve supply for future use.
Yeah.
You know, because things change as accounts grow.
Well, there was something too that was stated, in one of the reports that, that the less use of, to cut back the use on the wells would, you wouldn't be pulling as much. If we were using it as like a backup or something like that, you wouldn't be using as much, and you wouldn't be pulling, the chances of pulling more stuff in would be lighter than what it is, you know, using it as a full water source. I read that in one of the,
To that Moody's report, I'm strong with that. It's more, I read it.
Doug, I was under the understanding that if we went with Metro, that we would the wells will be capped and we wouldn't be using them again. Am I not correct?
That's what we included in the report at this time. Yeah.
So we wouldn't be using the wells as any alternative source, so would that eliminate the wellhead protection once we cap the wells?
Well, I think the next time a developer comes in, that argument will, you know, that argument won't be available anymore. That was the argument that they were considering a zone change that was in, you know, it contradicted their comprehensive plan, which included the wellhead protection scheme.
So what do we do with the cost of, the engineering costs here that we have in front of us are for capping off both wellheads and closing those wells completely? Would the cost, the scope of work of this change if we are capping off wells?
I mean, the issue we're gonna have, if we're not using the wells, then you have to maintain it, right? So that, I mean, to Nan's point, right, either you have a wellhead protection program in place, or you cap the wells, right? So, I mean, I understand, I fully understand and fully appreciate his question, and I think we'll just have to review that as we move forward.
Yeah, your source is from that aquifer, but a different part of it, right?
It's all the same aquifer,
Yeah.
I just happen to be farther away from the surface water source.
Yeah, so maybe the wellhead protection, still, I mean, I don't remember that, I don't have that good a memory of it, but, as long as there are wells to protect there, I would think that the wellhead, you know, protection, overlay would still be effective. You make that argument. I don't think it would just go away.
okay, is this for?
Yeah, if you cap the wells, what are you gonna do about people like Jeff Klein, who's fed off that well, who lives on Klein? There's a direct water line right out from the well to his place, his residence. I don't know if there's some kind of contract or a deal made with him for that purpose.
These are things that, you know, they're gonna be down the road, they're gonna have to be looked at, but I think these are things that, it's hard to answer right now unless.
But that's a valid point, I took a note, we would have to do something then.
Yes, sir, one more.
Just two quick things.
Sure.
Is there any equipment or any parts of the existing wellhead, the pump system or anything else like that that could be incorporated into the tie-in at Metro? And because we chlorinate the water coming out of the wells now, correct? I mean, the board or the village has spent, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years to install this equipment, maintain the equipment, whatever else like that. Wouldn't it be prudent or whatever to reuse or repurpose some of that equipment for whatever project side we end up on, either hook to Fulton or hook to Metro? I mean, you've got pumps, you've got chlorination system, everything else like that. It's all stuff that's already in place and already bought and paid for.
I would say,
Yeah, we can take a look at that. That's a good point.
That was one of the options that was brought up in one of the previous meetings we talked about, that what he was bringing forth to us was brand new stuff. So if we did move something and it broke on in midway or something, we don't want to be like out $60,000 because he didn't put that in the estimate. So he put it in there, but it is an option where he's going to look at the equipment, make sure it is functioning correctly and at the capacity that we need it to be at, and then it's an option.
Plus, they did this once with the Klein well, when we had the Klein well cleaned and a brand new pump installed, And then it was only a while later that they shut that well down, and we utilized the pump and stuff other places, you know, in the village. So, you know, that's the alternatives and the options too. Okay, I'm going to let Doug go, and I'm going to go back to the agenda. And I apologize to everybody, and hopefully that way you don't have to sit so long. I don't have anything. John, you have anything?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Over the past week and a half, I've been talking to a few residents, and one suggestion I made to help bridge the gap between people over the issue is, my suggestion to them is to form a citizens water committee. And what it would be consistent of is they would pick maybe 6 residents that they wanted to really represent people, whoever from their group. And I talked to Jim Lynch, and Jim Lynch is on board with me, and I'm 100% behind it. And I would like to know if any other board members would like to participate in it. They would be informal meetings. You could hold it once a month. It would be a time where residents can actually sit with board members. You could discuss the water issues, bring up any points they need to be brought up, garner some new ideas, and I think it allows them to help more in the decisions that we've made and help the process move along. So I guess what I'm asking is are there any other board members that would be interested in sitting in with that and joining that?
I think that's a great idea. I know I've talked to a couple of members, coming up with like a plan right now with people that have coloration and documenting that. Maybe that's something that the committee can handle so we can see if we did improve it down the road.
And that's what I think the group could do. I mean, it allows the residents to bring a concern. It's not in a formal meeting, but it's more of a meeting where everybody leaves everything at the door. Your differences are left at the door. You meet, you sit down, you talk, discuss, and I really think it could be a benefit for everybody in the long run, the board and the public. So that would be my proposal. If any of the other board members would like to participate in that, it would be great.
To go on what John is just talking about, anybody that has time in the village knows that back in the 70s, it was established, the same thing, and I was on it as I did the chemical analysis and all this kind of stuff about this, and we did this as a concerned bunch of citizens, and it was called the Phoenix Village Water and Sewer Citizens Committee. Long title, but we used to meet once a month, all together up at the VFW, and they let us use their upstairs room, and I'll tell you, there was a lot of stuff that got hashed over, there was stuff that got changed, and there was happy people and there was not so happy people, but it does work out. And what John's trying to say, you know, forget that I'm part of the committee, forget that I'm part of the board, forget that I'm nobody. Let's just go and, you know, and work together and see. Because I know there's ideas out there.
And the idea of it is we'd like to keep the group small. So, and I know from speaking with Mike Wyatt, he's the person to get a hold of for residents. And what they would do is they would pick maybe 6 people and then have 3 alternates. You know, in case a resident couldn't make it, then they have an alternate that would go in their spot. And like I say, we would have any board members, and there may be a time that maybe we can get the engineer to come in. Maybe we can get Christie to come to a meeting and explain if they, you know, if there's issues with grants or information. I just think it's a worthwhile option to explore for everybody. And I only can see positive things coming from it if we try it.
For you people to sit out there and have the stuff in your pocket or at home and not tell us, is like us saying, you know, well, we don't know anything about this stuff either. I mean, we've gotta, it's our problem. It's everybody's problem that's in this village or on this water line. David?
Yep. I'll try to get on my schedule.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's hard. Do you have anything?
Other than the Tahoe.
Chief? Want to do your report?
It's,
You know, it's an emergency vehicle.
we were going to write in the budget, a new vehicle. The Tahoe is just not reliable.
It is.
So, we're trying to, you know, put miles on it now, but and hopefully it gets us through to the end of the year.
Is there quit while it's running too?
No. When we shut it off, sometimes we can't get it going. So that's why it runs continuously.
My personal vehicle would be in a Chevy.
It's been to the Chevy dealer. Been to the Chevy dealer several times.
At least a half an hour. Make it back. John just came up with the fix, the short-term fix, you kick the tire and it runs.
Rock it a little bit and start
Rocking a little bit. But Chevy can't figure it out.
Yeah. They've taken it down there when it had problems, and they hooked it up to the machine.
They can't hear what's going on.
Sorry.
I've taken it down to the dealership when it had problems, and they plugged it up to the machine and tried to go through it, and they still couldn't figure out nothing with it. So I've taken it down there twice for that, and I know it's been down there before that prior, for what, a couple weeks at a time.
A couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and they still can't come up with nothing on it. Yeah.
And one other thing, our plow truck, is that all set for winter?
No. Not yet, we're working on it. We still got, flowers to get done and get on it, and we're working on the sander right now. Hopefully in the next couple weeks we'll have it ready.
Thank you.
Yep. We have another issue.
Is that Dave? Ryan?
I'm all set.
Okay.
Just what we're talking about the Tahoe quick. Right now the Ford has, I think, 4 or 5 recalls. One of them is overnight, and we haven't brought it down because we don't have a second reliable vehicle. If I bring the Ford down and the Tahoe doesn't start, we're gonna have to run.
There's the lights.
All right, Ryan?
I'm all set.
All set. Okay, let's go to Chief.
I would just like to commend the men and women of the Phoenix Police Department for their investigation that they conducted over the last 6 or 8 weeks. We had an inundation with burglaries between September 4th and October 15th. And they did one heck of a job investigating, and they brought the suspect to justice. I just want to thank them for that.
Thank you. I didn't know you were next. You got anything, John?
No, I do not.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'll first address the message that John Halstead was talking about. I've been in direct contact with 911 up in, is it Oswego? Oswego, and they are willing to help us with a reverse 911 message, type of message to everybody on their, in their database. And I think they said they can get out to about 500 people in 2 minutes to type even like an Amber Alert type thing.
Correct.
And as we continually explore our own in-house message, they'll help us with that. So hopefully that'll get the word out when there is some type of water main break, flushing, which brings me to, for instance, today we cleaned our water tower. Today the water tower was cleaned and inspected. The inspection came out fine, the paint and the coating on the inside passed, and there was quite a bit of sediment and silt at the bottom of the water tower. I learned a lot, they explained a lot to us, we have pictures and data coming in, and if anybody experienced brown water today, that was the reason. And when we come across situations like this, the company nor us had any idea that water would be discolored because of this. Am I right, John?
Yes.
And what they found, they said was not anything unusual. It's been a few years. It's been a few years too long since it's been cleaned or inspected. We're going to put it on a regular maintenance schedule, and they think that within a short period of time, just that alone will help with the discoloration of the water. And contrary to John doesn't want to speak, but if I say this wrong, I think there's an issue with chlorination and a bunch of different items in there that they found. So that was a positive day. They made, hopefully the water will be a little bit cleaner delivered to your homes. But today was a perfect example where there was no reason to announce or put a public notice out there that the water could be brown, because it was never even a concern. Same as 2 weeks ago when we replaced a fire hydrant. John and his crew tried to isolate the hydrant like they do every other time. A couple lines that you had no idea where they went to when you opened up the ground were found. So it's not like we're flushing all the time. It's not like we're not notifying. It's just some things come up. So we are working on trying to educate ourselves, work on our maps as to what's underground, and find a better way to notify the residents. So the water tower was cleaned and everything was found okay. Bathhouse, we're working with our contractor and EPW. We should start, it's all been UFBO'd, and we should start in about a week excavating. We'll work with Doug, he's not here, but we'll work with Doug and the contractors. Oh, you are here? Oh, sorry, Doug. We'll work together and get that going, and that needs to be completed by the end of the year for our funding. Most of the other stuff that I've been working on has been covered tonight, and the last thing is I've had quite a few residents ask about these lawn and leaf bags that are to be available to them for fall cleanup. I believe each one of you have estimates that I provided in your packet. Not sure which route you want to take. It's not that expensive, but I know we've let them know that these bags will be available and we do not have any, so it's something you might want to consider.
That is Jim. Okay. Anybody on the board got anything for Jim?
Everybody here. Several years ago, weren't we instructed by the Board of Health to flush the hydrants a certain number of times per year?
We do it twice a year. Spring and...
Per the health department. Yeah, we do it twice a year per the health department. They made the schedule, the plan for the village.
And they came in, they showed us the proper way to do it too.
They took the mapping of the system, and they told us what to do pretty much, step by step.
Okay, just want to make sure I thought I heard that before. Thanks.
Anybody else got any questions for him from the board? Clerk?
Yes. I need to ask the board for permission to shred the old paperwork that is able to be destroyed per New York State Archives protocol.
Shred it.
Shred it.
Take it to the
Do a motion for them to follow protocol for New York State shred.
I have a question.
Yes.
If board members have boxes of old paperwork, can you also bring that down for the shredded truck?
Yep.
I have a motion to do that.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Ryan, second by Dave. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Anything else?
I also have, asked the board for resolution to set the village election day 2015, which is on a Wednesday, and it'll be held at Enterprise Fire Company from noon until 9 p.m. It's for the mayor and 2 trustee positions for a 2-year term.
Make that motion.
Motion by Dave,
Second.
second by Ryan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Carried. Anything else? Trust, attorney's comments.
I have enough.
Okay, we have to accept, right? Abstract number 16, dated October 21st, 2014. Anybody got any questions? Motion to accept it?
Make the motion.
Motion by Ryan, seconded by
I'll second.
John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Full business, approval of the regular meeting minutes for September 16th, 2014. And who's, anybody absent for that? Just doing that? Okay, that, we need to have a motion to accept those minutes.
Make the motion.
Motion by Ryan, seconded by Dave, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carried. Approval of the regular meeting minutes, October 7th, 2014.
Make the motion.
Second.
Motion made by Ryan, seconded by Dave, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I abstain. And we have a facility, go to new business, a facility use request. Covered it up. And this is for November 12th, and it's a meeting here, right?
It's a volleyball banquet.
It's okay, for Phoenix Varsity Volleyball Banquet here on, is that 12/12 or 11/12? 11/12/14. Have a motion to allow them to use it? Everything is here. Motion by Dave, seconded by Ryan, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, anybody have anything else from the board for right now? If not, I do have at least one that wants to speak, so I will open it up under, public comments. Carol.
Carol Spanable, 408 Main Street. What's this stuff to the counter?
That's your microphone.
I thought I was talking on that one.
Recorder.
Why do I need a recorder if I'm talking like this? Sorry, Rex. I wrote myself a letter this morning that I'm going to read tonight. I mean, I didn't write it to myself. I wrote it to anybody who wants to listen. But one of the things that I wanted to say, but I haven't been able to in 2 meetings, was I was very excited 4 weeks ago when I was here about reporting on my Oswego County Tourism Advisory Board. And we had some exciting things going on at our meeting that very day. We're going to be, there's a very good, almost a done deal, is we're going to be having some cruise ships coming into Oswego Harbor in 2016. They're having all kinds of meetings, get-togethers, and it was pretty exciting that day because I know that this would mean something to our community because they'll be taking these people around by bus, and they will come down to Henley Park or whatever. And I just thought that might be something exciting. And in the course of this meeting that I went to, they were discussing, and I was looking at history. If any of you have been to the H. Lee Memorial, or not Memorial, Museum in Oswego. There is just tons of history in that building, and I kind of got lost in the whole thing. And I happened to think about all the history that we have around here. And I'm thinking strongly about next summer, bringing some of this history to the attention of our kids. I hope nobody has a problem with that. So if they see me down to the park with all kinds of whatevers, I'm showing the kids and telling the kids about the history, because there is a lot of it around here. Another thing that I wanted to do, and we've already done it, is I wanted to thank the police department for all their work, because they work hard and it's very noticeable, and I appreciate everything that they do, and I know we all do. But this is my letter that I wrote this morning, and I need to read this so I don't forget something that I need to say. After the last 2 board meetings, I said I was not going to attend again anytime soon, but here I am. Are you recording this? Shut it off. I know this village is going through some difficult times.
One thing to add to the first thing that Carol talked about, I have located a telephone number and a name, and I'm trying to maybe this coming summer, have the Day Peckinpah, which has been turned into a museum and a floating classroom. So far they've stayed down from Waterville down that way and the Hudson River all the way up to Lake George, but they will be hopefully coming up the canal this way, and I want to make sure when I get a hold of them that they turn and come north on the old route that they took before, and maybe get it here for a day, so we can hope for it. So, thank you, Carol. Anybody else got any? Yes, sir. Are you just, oh yeah, okay. Yes, Don.
Over there?
Yes. Well, you don't have to state your name again, though.
It's been some time since I've been to a board meeting. I'm sorry to say that my hearing's going. I didn't hear all that I would have liked to tonight, but I did sit here and look at the inscription on the banner at the table. And I thought it was very appropriate, and it actually goes along with what Carol said. It says, "Together we can make a difference." I personally think the phrase, "together we can," is sufficient. And let's not put so much emphasis on the differences, because I think that Phoenix has always been a village to pull together, and we will continue to do so. I appreciate all the work that all those who volunteer and do the work that they do, and I think the idea of a committee to work together, disregarding party. Party isn't the important thing, although the politicians will tell you differently. It's what you can do to help one another. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Record myself. I'm Mike again. I have a general question for the board. I've been trying to, as it's become very apparent, I don't know a lot about the general structure of board meetings, obviously. And I've been trying to educate myself. So I had chatted with John actually last week about if there were village bylaws and that sort of thing that are available for me to read and try to learn more about how this all runs so that I can act appropriately and schedule kind of talks or whatever we need to do in order to be able to work together in the future. And he suggested I come and ask.
To the mic, please.
Sorry about that. Anyway, what I am here to ask is if Attorney Primo knows if there are village bylaws for the general function of the village government, or if the only real laws that we have on file are the code enforcement book, which I think is what Roxanne located when I stopped by the other day, which is quite the volume, by the way.
But Mike, that's the entire village code, but to answer your question, the village has no established meeting conduct procedures, so it goes basically by state law, okay? And, you know, if you want to get some ideas, if you just go on, you know, they're not called bylaws, but if you just...
No, they're, I think I found the ones you're talking about, the rules of, I want to call them rules of engagement, that's not correct.
Rules of conduct, I think it's, I looked up one thing and it was rules of conduct, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, there's New York State guidelines for rules of conduct during a board meeting. I just wasn't sure if we had specific.
And that covers both sides. It covers us and it covers you.
Okay.
But now there's no New York statutes or anything. What I was going to suggest is you just, you know, Googled, you know, New York Village meeting procedures, something like that. You're going to pull up something that'll give you in other villages where they have adopted procedures or towns. You'll get, you know, you can pull up things that'll give you ideas, and it's not, you know, some villages and towns have adopted procedures, some don't. You know, unfortunately, sometimes procedures get adopted because of what's happened in meetings, so then, you know, they put procedures in place, you know.
Yeah, there's stuff I've read so far, it's shown that there's a very loose set of rules that are kind of the overall top standard, and that's why I was curious if there were more specific ones in the village now. So that's good, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I was just wondering who services the website for the village?
You do?
Who's the web designer?
The name is Bruce Coupling or something like that.
How often do you update it? Who am I asking? I don't know. No, my point is, Mike, local village residents, has a small business called Tech Geekery. He would be able, if the village had a minimal amount in their budget, he could stream, because I know Mr. Halstead was making comments, a lot of us have recently showed up to board meetings. He could do live streaming of board meetings, because a lot of people they don't have access to be here. They work second shift, third shift, they have kids, they can't come to board meetings, but they'd like to be active participants. Plus, he designs websites, hosts websites. Because the website for the village is very difficult to navigate, to find water reports, you have to look under documents and then search for it. It should be readily accessible. So when you go to the button,
When we usually do put the water reports up there, we put a banner right across the front page also.
I know, but if you look at it for the general public, a lot of people, I think Mr. Dunn said the last time, and some people here, they're not internet savvy. I'm just saying, if Mike would probably do it for free if you let him into your website to post stuff so everybody would know, like what Jim Lynch is trying to say about hydrant flushing. Look, there could be a, you know, whatever, a flag or a blinking thing that says, okay.
That's what we do put on the website.
I don't see it. You have a little button of grants.
No, we put hydrant flushing, bright red across the front page we put it on 2 to 3 weeks before the hydrant flushing.
I know, whatever. It's still difficult to navigate as a website. I asked the Department of Health too. You have things, I finally had an opportunity to read. You have this whole village history and strategic planning. I found it to the left of the website, scrolled down, found the document, found the history of what was going on in terms of crime in the city, the difficulties assessing water. I found all of that, but it wasn't in one location. Like, here's everything you need to know about water. Here's this strategic planning that the village had in place that Mr. Primo drafted for the village. Just simplify the website so we all know what's going on. And then maybe let him, since he likes to record everything, people can see and then they can maybe mail in comments for the next meeting.
I think we can just, you know, take your statements into consideration and look at some of the stuff, and if there's things we can change to make it better, what we'll try to do.
And immediate, like I said, whoever your current I don't know what they call them. Yeah, webmaster. I mean, at least Mike's a local business, you support a local business.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Mike?
I'm not gonna walk over to the mic. Everybody hear me? I have a problem with my legs. I just want to thank the board because 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I asked every one of you what you planned on doing and how you planned on doing it, and you did it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If there's no one else, I would like to thank those people that did come tonight. And hopefully we can all work together and accomplish something. And you people on the committee, keep up the work. Obviously some of you are doing homework. And that can only be for the good also. So thank you very much and thanks for coming out. And I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. John made the motion. Dave second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.